There's like a little lie there, but a bit alright.
It looks like you're live from heaven.
It looks like that line. Have you ever seen The Omen? On all the photos.
Oh yeah, shit.
Before they die. Hey, it's a bit ominous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a good sign, that.
We're probably all going to die soon anyway, because Trump's going to cause Armageddon in his final few days. You two have been on the video before, haven't you? Did you do the live election night stuff together?
Yes, we did. Alex, what time did you stay awake till?
Oh, hello?
Hello, can't hear you, Alex.
Can't hear you. Oh, there you go. You're back in the room.
I'm going to do it without headphones. They're not working for me.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no, I went to bed at like 3 and thought I'd be okay. And I woke up in a panic at 7. And then I saw the results. And obviously I didn't have a clue about the postal vote stuff, about the fact that there was going to be like a delay in results. And I was like, oh God, he's getting again, isn't he? And I freaked out. But you guys were obviously covering it throughout the night, and you had a feeling, you saw how it was turning throughout the night and over the coming days. So yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean, Jay stayed up all the night. I went to bed about 3 o'clock as well myself. So
you nipped. I'm back in a minute.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, my kids are awake.
Yeah, I saw it through, but I was with you, Alex, because at one point it looked like Trump had won. Like, I was going off the bookies. I kept going off like what the bookies were saying, and they were more or less paying out at one point on Trump, like it was over. And then it started to, when all the postal votes started to come in, it started to change massively. And then it went from like, because at one point it was like 5-1 on that Trump had won, which is like, you know, the equivalent of being 4-0 up at half time in a football match. And then all of a sudden, like, I think Wisconsin was the big one where that came in for, it started to shift. And then you thought, oh, hang on a minute, Biden's got a slim chance. And then Pennsylvania and Arizona as well, when it looked like Arizona was going to go, because Fox News called that very early, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which upset Trump. And Michigan, then won that. Yeah, Michigan, that was it. And he started to win all the states that Hillary had lost in 2016, the blue belt, whatever you call it. And then, yeah, it was like, maybe we are saved from another nightmare, or prolonging the nightmare. Should we do some introductions?
Yeah, go ahead. Hello, I'm Scotty. This is Motti. Welcome, Alex Mays, back to the Scotty and Motti show. I've not been briefed on your political party, Alex, or anything like that. Jay's been completely useless, so I have no background. So excuse the questions that I might ask.
I'd like to keep it like that. Keep it on the cuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're finding out when the viewer's finding out, so it makes it more exciting. That's a deliberate.
Don't try to put a fucking spin on it.
That's not me being incompetent and forgetting to tell you. That is me. It's a journalistic technique, mate. You want to learn it. It's called.
Oh, fucking hell!
It's called half-assed journalism.
Yeah. Go on.
I was going to say, as everyone who watches knows, me and Scotty during lockdown decided to start this channel, start this podcast, because times were grim. There was a lot going on in the world that we wanted to talk about. We weren't very happy with the political landscape, if we're being brutally honest, with whether that was Boris Johnson, whether that was Donald Trump. So we started this podcast in light of all that, and the reaction's been great, and we appreciate your support. But Alex Mays, who's with us, who's a mate, he took it a little bit further than just a podcast, just a little old podcast, and decided to really do something to change the political landscape by starting his own party. So, Alex, I'll let you explain, how this all came about. How did it all start?
Yeah, so I've not always been massively into politics, if I'm totally honest with you. It wasn't until I moved up to Manchester and I sort of trained to be a journalist that I started getting more engrossed in current affairs, and it started really interesting me. And then you saw Corbyn, like, it came at a similar time to when Corbyn was sort of become like in the leadership contest for Labour in 2015. And it was just one of those sort of moments where I was like, oh my God, like there's something here. There's something quite good here, and something totally different from what I've been used to in politics, when you see you kind of almost feel like in a lot of recent years, you see Tories against Labour, and it's almost very similar candidates. They don't really offer anything different. And we saw that progress. You know, they were very close in 2017 to winning. And then 2019, it obviously went to absolute pot for Labour, and they lost so heavily. And it got to like this. It was probably like this time last year that I started thinking, this is just not good. Like, this is like really, like, the state of politics in this country is going down a really dodgy path, like a path that I'm not particularly comfortable with. And you saw more and more as time went on, like Boris Johnson and his cabinet. You were kind of expecting the decision, like all the stuff that was in their manifesto. You know, a lot of quite stuff that you kind of like really uneasy about was sort of coming into fruition. And you saw, you know, Starmer took over Labour, and you're a bit like, okay, I wanted to give the guy a chance, because I think, you know, he sort of became leader off a platform of socialism. He said, like, you know, a lot of what we took from 2017, 2019, we're going to take it into my leadership. And then just more and more as time went on, you saw like so many different things started happening in Labour that just sort of made me think, this is not the party for me. It doesn't feel like it's the party for the working class, which, you know, they've said for decades, that's been what Labour is. They are the party of the working class. And they're not anymore. And they're not representing anyone, I don't think, in so many different like working class communities up and down the country. And it just wasn't good enough for me. And I think I got to like the summer, and I was like, I'd been thinking about it for a little while, and I thought, no, sod it. Like, this is the time to do it. I need to start something. So the Breakthrough Party sort of came from there, really. And these last few months, I've been putting together like lots, like obviously I had to apply to the Electoral Commission. I'm still awaiting a decision from them, but hopefully it should be ratified next week. Started like doing all the website and designing everything, putting policies together, and starting to like really build out membership. Like next week, we've got our first meeting, like kicking off with like people who've signed up and stuff. So it's all moving in a really good direction. And it's just at its heart, ultimately, is like working class progressive politics. And it's all about empowering working class communities, giving working class people a voice, giving them representation in government, and bridging this sort of growing inequality gap that we're seeing in this country. So that was a really long spiel, but that gives you an idea.
That's amazing, and I think if you've watched any of our previous podcasts, I've become more disengaged. Where I think Jay, you've probably become more engaged with politics, and I've been saying that I don't think that there is anyone that speaks for people like me. I'm not too sure your background, Alex, but where I grew up and stuff, and I know where Jay's from, and that there isn't that voice that's in Parliament anymore. So what's your end game? You say you want to give a voice to the working classes. So what do you have, like, what's the success in your views?
I think short-term success is seeing a few local councillors elected under the Breakthrough Party banner. And again, just through these people being elected, like making a difference in these, in working class communities. I think at first, especially across Greater Manchester, but I'm wanting it to be a lot more national than that eventually. I think with the first past the post electoral system at the moment, it makes it really hard for small parties to be successful. So I think targeting certain regions, I think, is definitely the way forward. And yeah, ultimately, like, we want to get people in parliament, like, get MPs in under the Breakthrough Party, really give real representation for working class people in government.
That's fantastic, mate. It's really good.
Took the words right out of my mouth there, Scotty. Yeah, it is fantastic. And no, I get where you're both coming from. I know, Scotty, you said earlier there you've been disengaged, and I get that. And Alex, you said, you were looking at Labour in particular, and you just didn't feel like they were speaking to you or for you anymore. And I completely understand that, and I have felt a little bit like that more and more as the last few weeks have rumbled on. Keir Starmer's not a leader who connects with me, if I'm being honest. He doesn't, and some of his interviews and his actions, I saw him on LBC the other week arguing with a white supremacist, and it was the most pitiful argument I've ever heard. It was just like, you're almost both siding the argument on behalf of him. And I was like, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? This isn't what I want to hear. I want to hear you taking this guy or this woman, I think it was, to the cleaners. What's the reaction been like, Alex? Because obviously when you start something like that and you tell people and you're trying to get people involved and you're reaching out to people, because me and you talk quite a lot, and I know you have put a lot of effort into this. You're not just doing this as a
publicity stunt or as to get a few followers on Twitter. You're throwing everything into this. What's your reaction been like from people when you told them what you're doing, whether that's people you reached out to, your mates, your family, whoever?
It's been overwhelmingly positive, I'll be honest with you. Like, I think a lot of people look at what we stand for and what sort of policies that we're putting together, and just the general mission of the movement, really, and gone, yeah, this is something that I can get on board with, because there just isn't anything out there like this, I don't think. Like, I've had like a lot of really good conversations with like a few former MPs and a few activists and quite a few, lots of different people from different backgrounds, and like obviously like friends and family know about it and stuff like that. And everyone's been really overwhelmingly positive. Like, I know there's still so much work to do, and like as you said, like I've put a lot of work into it already, and I know there's like a lot of work to come over these next few months, especially building the membership out and competing in local elections. But I'm really passionate about it, and I'm going into it for the right reasons. Like, I think there's a lot of politicians that go into this now who are just career politicians. They see, a good salary in Westminster. They make some good friends in private companies, private businesses. And then as soon as they lose, they eventually lose their constituency, they go on from Westminster and end up as like a non-executive director of one of these companies, make lots of money, and they're happy and they're set up for life. I just don't see it like that. It really is about serving your community and serving people and like helping people, because there's just not, there are a few MPs in Parliament who I think are generally in there for the right reason and want to do something good. But there's just so many you just can tell are self-serving, not doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, no, you make a great point regarding, and we've discussed this on this show, is regarding career politicians. It's just a really safe and lucrative life, isn't it, for them when they're going into when they leave Eton and the likes, and they go into Parliament. But you'll be bringing sort of life experiences which will allow you to have empathy with your working class voters and stuff, so you'll be able to know what they're talking about. And for me personally, that's the key thing about being a politician. You need to be able to do that. That's why you're there. So all the best to you, man. I'm really happy to get involved, to listen to more about what you're doing and that.
No, I appreciate that, mate. Like, I think as well, like my background is I grew up on the south coast in a little town called Newhaven. It's sort of in between Brighton and Eastbourne. It's like a port town, like by the seaside, quite deprived community. I was very lucky. Like, my mum did did her absolute best in like giving everything that she could to me and my brother. She worked like multiple jobs and stuff, but there were so many people that I knew that were in, who weren't as fortunate and were living in real poverty. And it's just not nice to see. And like, when you see that, and, I think when I lived along the south coast, like I lived in like some, after Newhaven, I lived in a few like Chichester, which is very middle class, and then went to Canterbury. But then I moved up to Manchester, and it just totally, again, like opened my eyes, like, because Manchester has some gorgeous places, and I love Manchester. Like, I couldn't ever see myself living anywhere else. It's just like, I see it as my home now, like really connect with it a lot. But then again, there's communities up here that suffer the same fate as Newhaven down south. I think there's a lot said about the north-south divide, and that, there's northern towns that suffer maybe more than southern towns. And I don't fully believe that. I do think there's deprivation in communities across the UK, but they all face a lot of similar issues, and there's actually a lot of different issues as well. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I'm tired of that whole sort of north versus south thing. I think it's poor people versus versus the people that are causing people that are having no money, and that's a big difference. But I've never had much of a conversation. You went to university in London, didn't you, Jay? But I've never really met any Southern Labour voters ever, or anyone who's working class from down there that would class themselves as left wing. They usually are Tory or like closet UKippers.
It's weird, isn't it? Because like, I always find, and I don't know, you might disagree, Alex. I know certainly in London, like when there was Blair, there was a lot of sort of centrist left to centre voters in London, and then that seems to, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be as prevalent now, and there seems to be more sort of in the south, especially, and in London, there's a lot more Tory voters. In the north as well, which has always been sort of Labour heavy, a lot of people now are either not voting Labour or not voting, which is hurting a lot of the communities. And there has been this sort of infighting with Labour. We keep going back to Labour. There's been this infighting, whether it was the Blairites and the Brown supporters, whether it was, we can go even back before that even, or whether it's the Miliband's and the Corbynistas or whatever, or, the Starmers. And when you're reaching out to people, Alex, are you sort of reaching out to everyone and saying, like, you might be a Tory voter who doesn't like Boris Johnson? Or is it more if you're sort of left-leaning and really progressive that you feel that that's going to be the sort of person you're going to attract?
What I'm wanting to do really with Breakthrough is actually, I don't want it to be like a club for just this type of person or this type of person. I do see that from a policy perspective and what we stand for, I think there's a lot to like, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. I wouldn't want to just be like, oh, we are socialist and we are just only after socialists and that's kind of it. I think there's a real danger with that. And I think fundamentally as well, we've seen with the mainstream media over the last 5 years or so, is that they've really gone in hard on socialism in a really negative way. And I think it's going to take a long time for people to realize that socialism can be a really, it's a really good thing. And like, there's a lot to like about it. But I think the rhetoric needs to be toned down. I think it needs to be a bit more accessible for people, because I think that's been the issue as well. I don't think politics has been made particularly accessible for people. I think there's like a big job in terms of educating people politically. And I think that would lead to a lot less disenfranchisement and like a lot less disillusionment, because people would be in the know. They'd actually fully understand and want to understand what's going on and get engaged in it. And if they saw changes happening, like really positive changes, then they'd be like, right, I'm really on board with this. I want to get involved. How can I help? How can I make my community better? But when they just see the same old people day in, day out, screwing them over, ultimately, that's what they've been, the Tories have done for over a decade. And, I think even like during like the sort of the later Blair years as well, people weren't seeing the change that they were promised back in 97. So I think until that happens, we're just going to continue seeing this disenfranchisement, disillusionment, and this real dismay with politics.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what you need. Like, you need to be able to see sort of physical change on your doorstep, and for the good. All we get is it's like watching a repeat of Mrs. Brown's Boys every time somebody else comes in Parliament. It's just the same shit show every single 4 years, and I'm not making any sort of changes. But I like what you said about trying not to be sort of pinning it as a socialist movement, because it has been dirty. It has become a dirty word, hasn't it, socialism? I mean, even when I speak to my dad, who hasn't really got much of a political bone in his body, but when he said, oh, well, they're socialists, and I said, and how's that a bad thing? And it's because he listens to like a talk sport, he's a white van man, do you know what I mean? And he's not, he's not racist, Alex. But his own words. But do you know what I mean? But that's a sort of, he's in the sphere now where media controls the rhetoric so much for the work, especially for the working class sort of people who do read the Sun and do have the talk sport and stuff. How do you counter that then from your point of view, if it is possible from your party?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Don't get me wrong, like it's a massive challenge. I think you could argue like there's very much in the media is in that pocket. Like right-wing media are very much like will support these guys all the way in what they're doing. Like I think the main concern I see at the moment is you're seeing likes of Nigel Farage and like Lawrence Fox coming in with their anti-lockdown, freedom of speech bullshit, basically. Like it's even like it's opportunism. It's identity politics. It's not like dealing with real issues. But these are again the same type of people that are saying we're speaking for you. We speak for the working class, when they're both the biggest bunch of like establishment individuals possible. Like these are guys that privately educated. Nigel Farage was stockbroker in the City of London in the 90s and going into the 90s, and was a Tory, a former Tory party member as well. And then you got Lawrence Fox, who grew up very well. Like he had a very, very privileged background. And you got these people entering politics when these are the exact people you really need away from politics right now. I think people are absolutely sick to death of rich people telling us what to do and like how we should be living our lives. I think that's come out in the universal credit stuff that's happened recently as well, about the fact that obviously they're looking to cut this universal credit by 20 quid a week. You've seen a lot of that. You've really seen what the Tory party and right-wing parties are all about, which is ultimately screwing over the poor. And that's kind of it.
I saw that you mentioned the Universal Credit, and one of our least favourite people on this podcast is Priti Patel. I saw the interview with her. I don't know if you saw it, Alex. I can tell by your reaction you did. I don't know if you saw it, Scott, where she just, almost gaslighting us during the same interview, saying one thing at the beginning and the opposite at the end. Like, we're going to forget what you've just said at the beginning of the interview. Like, about how, important it is that people on Universal Credit are getting the support they need and this, £20 extra or whatever. And then at the end of it, when she's asked, she's voted to why she's not voting to keep it, to stop it being cut, just coming out with a load of waffle that doesn't make any sense about, we are supporting them. Well, if you're supporting people on Universal Credit, why not actually physically support them with the money that you said that they're reliant on? I mean, just going back to what you're doing, Alex, and how do you, you talk about breakthrough. One of the biggest problems I have, and, me and Scott have spoken about this with each other constantly on this podcast, and it's, we have this problem ourselves. It's that apathy. It's that frustration. It's that not necessarily not giving a shit, caring, but just thinking, like we've all said, why bother? Why bother voting? You're giving me a choice between one guy from Eton and another guy from Eton, one rich white guy and another rich white guy. Why, why bother? Why, when they all lie, when they all do this, when they all do that, why, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of young people feel that as well. How do you sort of think you can get that message across, that not necessarily to not vote for them, but to get involved? And even if they're not just voting for you, because I know you're doing a bit of a thing where, you want people to get involved more than just voting for you, but to support you, to help you, to canvass, to join, to campaign or whatever. How do you get through the apathy? How do you reach out to people, do you think?
I think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be really hard. Like, there's a lot of anger. But also, like, not only anger, there's a real lot of, as you say, like, just people just saying, "Oh, I just don't care. Like, I don't want to talk about it." Like, I've experienced that. Like, with my parents and like my friends, like, they don't want to talk about politics. They get sick of me talking about politics, because, understandably so, when you look at what we've got at the moment. So yeah, it's going to be really tough. I think you've got to offer something different. You've got to offer something away from the status quo, which ultimately, like, we've been living in for, God, like, decades. Like, there's never been like a real sharp shift away from what you'd consider the political normal. I think the only way by disrupting that is having parties like Breakthrough that can actually come in and offer something fresh and new. Like, I think there's obviously always going to be trepidation. There's always going to be that sense of like, well, what makes them different? Are they going to be exactly the same as every other party that exists and every other politician? And all I can really say is that no, we're not. We're absolutely not. Like, I want to do things differently. I really want to see some like fresh enthusiasm. I want to get people involved in politics who are normally not involved in politics. I don't want people like, I think you do need a few people that have been activists for Labour or, worked, had some sort of political involvement before, helping steer things as well. Because obviously you need a bit of experience, but having people that are totally new to politics, I really want to engage them, and like people that have never voted before, people that have never even thought of being a member of a political party before, and actually say like, look, we're actually offering something different here. And it's cutting through that noise. It's cutting through the bullshit, basically, that we're fed every day, that this is as good as it gets, which is not. It ultimately isn't. Like, we can do so much better. Like, you see a lot of people that as soon as you start talking down the UK, you're considered, a traitor. You're considered someone that doesn't like this country, doesn't love this country. But I consider myself a patriot in the sense that I look at this, I look when I walk down the street, I see homeless, loads of homeless people on the streets. You see food bank use like skyrocketing. You're seeing like child poverty increasing massively. I don't want that to happen. Like, I don't know how you can be proud of that. I don't know how you can be really happy with that being the situation. So like, I think of myself as a positive patriot in the sense that I want a country that can be better. And this country is nowhere near as good as it can be. And I want to fight for that. And I want other people that join Breakthrough or want to support it or vote for it, whatever, to support that motion that we can build something so much better than this. Because, I've been so like, it just makes me so angry. I don't know how people can't. And it's hard because then you direct your anger at the wrong people, the wrong cause. And it's like, no, we need to direct our anger at the people that are ruling us, the people that are, the billionaires who are getting away with paying no tax. These are the people that are the scroungers of our society. These are the people that we need to be really angry at, and we need to do something about that. So it's channeling that anger in a really healthy and productive way and trying to get them out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one of the biggest frustrations I have is when people say, "Oh, I'm a proud Englishman or a proud Brit." Is like, how can you have any sort of pride when you see the problems that we've got going on there? Pride is when you look after your area. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we should be doing. We should be taking care of our garden in England. When you were talking earlier on regarding the likes of Lawrence Fox and Nigel Farage, and also the likes of Johnson and Trump, these sort of populist characters. I know you said we need to try and move away from this sort of identity politics that they're doing, but do you not think that there's something that you as a new party can learn from these figures? Because obviously they're garnering massive followers and interest on the likes of social media just through their personality. There isn't anybody who's sort of, for the left of the field, these people who come through seem to be more right wings, yet when you go to the likes of Twitter, which can be a bit of an echo chamber for your own thoughts, but it shows that there are people there willing to listen, that show their frustration. I mean, every time you see Keir Starmer put something up on social media, right below Jay having a go at him, there's a load of others below him that they're saying exactly the same sort of thing. To the audience is there, and I'm just wondering if it's something that you can tap into. I'm not saying be a Lawrence Fox, but surely when we're in an age now where we're seeing populist voters getting to the highest of powers, then there must be something in that what you can sort of take on for the greater good.
I totally agree with you. Like, I think there's personality politics. I think that's become a lot more important. I feel like almost we've shifted to this point now where the people who are actually in charge to run these parties or in charge of these parties, the leaders of these parties, are more important than the actual party themselves and what the party stands for. Which, you know, to a degree, as you say, I think you can get a lot of initial support for that. But as soon as, say, for example, let's just say, God forbid this happened, but like Reclaim Party got, you know, Lawrence Fox's party got a few MPs in, what would they do? Like, what would they actually do? I could not even begin to think what they would do, because they've not suggested anything that makes me think, oh, these are really positive things. All they do, as you rightly say, it's like they stoke, you know, they play identity politics. They stoke culture wars. Like you saw even with Robert Jennick, who's the community secretary, he, you know, they've not protected anyone during this crisis. The NHS, you know, poor children who can't access laptops or free school meals, care homes, the whole lot. But then they've been able to, yesterday, protect statues from being taken down. And it's just like, you know, statues of former slave traders and colonialists and racists. And it's just like, I can't play politics like that. I don't know how they can sleep at night playing politics. Yeah. I totally agree with you that there needs to be, not the left, but like definitely other people across the political spectrum can learn lessons in how you use social media and how you engage people. But I think if we just allowed politics to become that face level, it'd be such a danger of just nothing ever getting, like just making people angry about things to be angry about. And, you know, they make a success of it. Like Nigel Farage with UKIP, then Brexit Party, now the Reform Party, I think they're called now. I don't know what they're really called next, but you know, like when the next big thing comes along, they'll change it again. But people like this, they're just all they do is fuel people's anger. Like they play on people's, I guess like insecurities and worries, and they'll find a scapegoat to like blame. Like it's the EU, it's migrants, it's, you know, that single mum down the road who's on benefits. And ultimately that's such a dangerous game to play, because ultimately, like when they do get in power and they actually have the power to do something, they won't. Yeah. Nothing. They have no substance whatsoever.
No, it's all like it's a massive front for ego, really. I think, and for selfish endeavours. But what I was saying that you to learn from it is that people buy into people first and foremost, regardless. And like I said, when people aren't so politically engaged and haven't got time to be going through manifestos, and if someone's saying that, okay, you're broke because of the woman down the street that's on benefits, that's the reason why you're broke, regardless of whether it's true or not. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you are going to have to get into that sphere where you not fight dirty and stuff, but you've got to try and find the balance towards that.
No, I totally agree with you. I think it's, again, channeling that anger, like that channeling that anger. Like I get very angry, very angry when you see what's going on. Like you can tell even now, like just like, oh my God, like thinking about this stuff does make me really frustrated. And like, I think that would come through. Like, I don't think I would never want to be a politician that just, again, like, you know, like a Priti Patel who like go around the houses and never actually answer your question, or hide in the fridge like Boris did, or whatever else. Like, you know, I wouldn't ever see myself doing that. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and like, I always have done. I always probably will do, and I want that to come across in like how I talk about politics, because I'm really passionate about it, and like I do care about people, and I want things to be better. But I totally agree that needs to be. You do need to rely on that, on your personality as well. I think even in local politics in particular, I don't think people vote for the party; they vote for the person. I think that's like really important in local politics, especially. And as you say, even with like the leaders, like you see, like your Trumps, your Johnson, you see, Farage and the like, are personalities. They've cultivated a personality and this authenticity. I'm going to do that in brackets because it's not authentic at all. They cultivate these fake personalities, and people, fall for them. Like, they hook, line, and sinker. Of course, like having a personality is important, and you need to show you're passionate. But there has to be a way of doing that in the right way. And I think social media has definitely got a part to play in that. Like, I really want to try, and I haven't so far because I've just not had the time whatsoever, but I'm wanting to get on like TikTok and like use Instagram Reels and other features of social media to try and engage with people and be a bit more like, just a bit more transparent and a bit more like a normal person. Because I think so many people look at politicians and go, you're not a normal human being. Like, you don't have a clue what I go through every day, and you're so out of touch with everything. And I would never ever consider myself to be in that category at all, and I'd never want to. I want to engage with people. I want to make things better for people, and I think using social media and using other things like that, I think would be really helpful in engaging that.
Yeah, I think I'm in the middle of reading Barack Obama's new book, and one of the big takeaways from it is that when he just beat Hillary Clinton to run, his advisor turned around and said, "I'm really fearful for you, Barack." And he goes, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you're far too normal to be a president." And it's like people who want to who gets that certain level of power have to be driven by ego. I'm not saying that that's what you need, Alex, but obviously Barack Obama got to that level, and it was through his level of normality that people could have empathy with him, and he could get across to them. That works with people because, like I said, a lot of people have been sold a shitty stick for too long, and it is time for them to find something different to hold on to than a shitty stick.
It is, you know what? Like, I mean, you're so right. And I remember like interviewing Ed Miliband, and it was when the whole sort of Ed Miliband memes were doing the rounds about him eating a bacon sandwich, about him dancing. You remember he was doing that thing where he was clapping and just. I interviewed him a few times during like his time as Labour leader, and the first one was painful, and you got the impression that you were talking to a cyborg. It was all like very sort of regimented, like we're talking now as people, human beings interacting with each other, and it didn't feel like that. It just felt like, yes, I am here in Manchester because we need to address the issues regarding child sexual exploitation, and I'm here to make sure that it's like you're looking around for, are you talking to me or you're talking to someone else? Like, there was no connection there, and he did get a little bit better, but you felt that sort of disconnect. And I've interviewed a lot of politicians, and some are better than others. Jeremy Corbyn, for example, was on a human level, was just like talking to us chatting, where there's been others like David Cameron, very rehearsed, very like he knew his lines, and he did know his lines because he knew the questions. George Osborne was like autistic. He looked down into the corner of the room as he answered, wouldn't look you in the eye. And I think there is that issue of just, you want someone who, I don't want necessarily someone who's just like me representing me. I want someone probably who's a bit smarter than I am and a bit, less of a gobshite, and who isn't going to do some of the things and say some of the things that I've said. But I like someone who I can at least relate to. Do you know what I mean? And I think the problem we've got is there's too many politicians who, and not all of them, and I'm glad you made the point, Alex, that there's some that are out to do things for the right reasons. They want to make the world better, and B, are just like us. Do you know what I mean? Like, Tracy Babin, for example, who took over Joe Cox's seat, seems like a, just a genuine woman. And do you remember there was this sort of outrage where she wore a dress in the House of Commons with like one shoulder showing, and you're like, this is what you're up against. You know what I mean? You've got people there that are fucking siphoning off billions to their mates in the middle of a pandemic, and you're outraged because someone's showing a shoulder or because Angela Rayner called you scum. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's that disconnect there. And what I'm getting at is, over in America, we've seen it with Trump, and we're going to get onto Trump in a bit, where people felt he was outside the box. People felt literally outside the fucking mental box to be off his fucking out of his tree as well. But people felt, even though he is the establishment, people felt he wasn't. He was different. He said what he felt. He said what he thought. Even to a degree, you've seen it a little bit with Macron in France. He was sort of an outsider who. Do you think we can have someone like that in Britain who can make that sort of impact? Because the way the British political system is set up, it feels like if you're not a Tory or a Labour person, you're going to struggle to get to the very, very top. To become Prime Minister, for example, I'm not saying that's that's what your ultimate goal is. But do you think we could ever get someone like a Trump-type character over here in Britain who just comes from the outside of the political spectrum and goes all the way to the top?
I don't think it's off the cards. I really do think that could potentially happen. I think the UK has mimicked the US in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of people call, Boris Johnson Britain's Trump. And, again, like, he's cultivated a personality over years, like, of this sort of bumbling, buffoonish, again, like this guy, again, who was, from an early age was told that he was fit to rule this country. Again, zero skills to show for it really, and like any real knowledge of real life. But yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunity. Like, you're seeing people like Lawrence Fox trying to get into politics because they fit, they believe their own hype. They believe that they are someone that can make a difference. Don't think he will, but but I do think there are others that could come in and actually do a much better job. I don't know who, but Marcus Rashford. I think if Marcus Rashford stood tomorrow as an MP, or he started his own party, people would be well on board with that, because he's someone who's lived it. Like, he's someone that's he's had a working class upbringing. He's gone through, he's lived poverty. He's been through it, and come out the other side and become a world-class footballer for one of the best teams in the world. Sorry, Mike, I don't want to brag about United too much after seeing Newcastle, my team, lose 3-0 today. Play for an amazing side who has actually gone solid. This is really, taken issue with this one thing and built a campaign around it, and probably been a better opposition than Labour have, about free school meals and other things as well. But I think there is a possibility of someone like him coming into politics and being like, actually, I think I can do this better. And with the right backing, could make a real difference, and actually could be that person from the outside who comes in and shakes it up a little bit. I would love to see that, especially if it was someone like Marcus Rashford, maybe not Lawrence Fox. I would rather that didn't happen, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But yeah, I think there's definitely potential. I think people are angry enough and frustrated enough with the state of things to try something totally different, and someone from outside of the political sphere. That's why I wanted to start Breakthrough, because I'm someone who's never been in politics before. I've dabbled with, a couple of parties and gone, oh, this might be for me, but I've never really got fully involved. And it's like, I want to bring something fresh to the table and be like, right, I'm going to come in with no political experience whatsoever and say, well, why can't it be like this? But yeah, I hope there are more people that come into politics and don't have the experience and kind of go, well, why are things like this way? Why is this country so fucked, and why can't we actually come in and do something about this? Someone can come in and, tear apart the whole system and go, well, actually, you don't have to be a career politician to lead this country, or someone who's, was brought up in, through Eton and Cambridge and Oxford University and stuff. You've actually come in from nowhere, and you've actually got a really good vision for this country, and you could be someone that leads the country towards a much better future.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to think with how sort of splintered society is now. I don't think there's going to be a better time to start looking at other options when you look at how the Tory government have dealt with it and how Labour haven't really held them to account. And then when you look at Rashford, it's surprising that Labour haven't taken him under the wing or tried to use him in a sort of PR stance the way that Corbyn did. Storms that was embarrassing, and then Tony Blair did with Noel Gallagher, because it just seems to be, you would think that Keir Starmer must be looking at Rashford now to be the sort of person that if I get in with him, then that gets me the people who are who follow Marcus Rashford.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Like, because he's again, like, I think a lot of the criticism that has come towards Starmer, not only for not really standing for anything, his personality as well. He comes across. My mum described him as nothingy. That was kind of the way to describe him. Bless my mum. But yeah, she would describe him as nothingy. There's nothing really like to. No one really looks at him or like hears him speak and goes, "This is someone that really is going to inspire me and someone I can relate to and someone that could genuinely make a real difference to my life." It feels like very much more of the same. He doesn't feel like someone who isn't a politician. He's very well rehearsed. Like, obviously, his solicitor background, like, his legal background comes across in PMQs. He's very forensic. Can hold Boris Johnson to account to a degree, but he doesn't have that fire in him. He doesn't have that spark that makes him that little bit different and makes people stand up and take notice of him. Like, his social media as well has been really weird. Like, a lot of people sort of been said, like, "Oh, what social media intern has taken over the account today?" Because then all this, he'd start talking about unions and he'd start talking about like proper socialist things for like a day, and then it'd like disappear again, and he'd start talking about having like a strong and stable economy, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, like what's like you've gone back to Starmer bot again." I don't. So I think I think there's a lot to be said for Starmer. Like, and I think until they actually release policies as well, people are just going to look at him and be like, "What are you doing? Like, you're not doing anything." Like, how they're not ahead in the polls consistently against Boris Johnson and Tories, whose decision making has ultimately led to tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths. The economy is in absolute tatters. Like, we're in a really bad situation, and like how Labour still haven't capitalised and got ahead of them consistently in the polls, I find baffling. I find it baffling that 40% of the people in this country vote Conservative still, despite killing off, older people, sick people. But I guess that's been the Tory policy for years, isn't it? Through austerity and cuts to disabled welfare and everything else. Like, that's been, if you like them when they were doing it then, I guess you're gonna probably like them when they're doing it now.
So you're trying to say that they're more successful during a pandemic?
It's
yeah, it feels like it. You know what I mean?
It always feels like the Tories somehow managed to win the PR war. Like, when there was the coalition, like with austerity came in, they somehow managed to paint that as all the Lib Dems' fault. So when you went into the next general election, they got the Tories actually managed to get a majority. And it was just like, how has that happened? And the Lib Dems were almost decimated. Then you go into this pandemic and somehow the Tories are painted almost like they're victims of it. Like, oh, it's not our fault. Look, we're in this with you. And even though, like you say, they've made every decision along the way has been a terrible one. And somehow, like, they managed to look in some quarters almost better than Labour, who are still going through this infighting. At the time of recording this, I think I read something that Jeremy Corbyn's suing or taking legal action against Keir Starmer because Keir Starmer reneged on a promise to keep him fully in the party after the inquiry into the report on anti-Semitism. So you've got Labour just doing what Labour's been doing for years and just imploded almost. And going back to your earlier point about Keir Starmer, and, everything from social media, the way he acts, even the Marcus Rashford thing, like you were saying, Scotty, it's a fucking tapping. It is. Yeah. You jump on that. Look what Marcus Rashford's doing. We fully support him. We back this. This is fantastic. And somehow you've got Boris Johnson bragging about it in the Houses of Commons, going, Marcus Rashford's been a better opponent to me than you have, almost like bragging at his own incompetence. Then you had Labour putting out a tweet when it first happened, when Marcus Rashford very first got them to do that U-turn, sort of taking credit for it, and then doing the Marcus Rashford tweet afterwards, which to me looked really bad because it was like, you did it the wrong way around. And then the reaction was all that as well. Loads of people were like, why are you taking credit for this? Why are you not praising Marcus Rashford? And now the second tweet was probably scheduled, but it was the facts of, you did it the wrong way around. It didn't look great. And it just feels like you're saying, like, the PR side of things, Labour just doesn't seem to be able to get a grip of it at all. And I'm one of like the 0.1% of this population that actually bothers to watch PMQs because I'm that fucking sad. And you're right. Like, in many ways, Starmer is on the right side of the argument. He is making good points. He is holding Boris Johnson to account, but half the time Boris Johnson comes out of that looking like it's a draw, because he's got like the sound bites and the bluster and the act. And Keir Starmer's, I've got to choose my words carefully here because it sounds a bit of a contradiction, but he's almost too forensic. It's almost like you're watching someone who isn't a human. He's like a doctor describing
clinical.
Yeah, clinical. Thank you. It is. It's like he's describing symptoms to you or something. It's not like someone who's arguing. And I don't want him to be a Boris Johnson, but sometimes you just want him to be saying things and words and sentences that I can relate to. Like, he obviously can't swear, but this is a shambles. What you've done is a disgrace. Look at this. You've been handing out these contracts. How many people are dead? How many people are dying? I went to my local hospital. There's people in the streets queuing up to get in or whatever. But it's almost like he's reading from this piece of paper. Yes, what he's saying is right and accurate, and he's telling the truth. But he's just not connecting in a way, and it worries me because, me and Scotty always talk about this, and it's a long, long way away in the next general election. But my fear is that come the next general election, all the sort of shite that the Tories have done will be forgiven, and Starmer won't have won over the voters he needs to win. And I'm not a big Keir Starmer fan. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know if I'm going to vote for him in the next election. I'll be brutally honest. But, it amazes me, like you said, Alex, that Labour still can't seem to get ahead because despite even my own reservations about Keir Starmer, you think he'd be a much better option than Boris Johnson. And he's just not selling it that way at the minute. I don't think so anyway.
No, I totally agree. Like, even like the A-level fiasco is like another thing that Labour didn't cotton on to until the kids were literally protesting in the streets and saying this is bollocks. Like, we shouldn't be, like rich students shouldn't be getting, better grades through this algorithm that then like working class kids should be getting. And we've even had the same from the university rent strike in January. And before that, Labour haven't really cottoned onto it and gone, we're going to fully support students here. There's been a few Labour MPs that have gone, they've sort of stuck their head above the parapet and gone, we support these students, solidarity, etc., and we'll meet with them and chat with them. But the leadership and the party itself haven't gone, we fully support the rent strike of these university students who, again, have had such a raw deal this year, this academic year, even the academic year before, having to continue paying their rent despite not actually being able to even go into their accommodation, paying, full tuition fees for lessons that are delivered over Zoom. It's lovely chatting to you guys over stuff, but, when you're getting an education, that should be fundamental, having, physical lessons. As soon as that's taken away, there needs to be an element of well, this isn't right. You shouldn't be paying. And then, again, the government have gone, oh, it's up to universities to decide. Universities aren't going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to cut tuition fees, I'm going to cut rent, because it's not going to benefit them. It should be like them saying, we're going to do this. But again, Labour didn't get on top of any of this stuff. And I feel like it's almost like what I feel with Labour is that I think they're in danger of doing is being like death by focus group, where they're trying to say the right things of, this person who lives in Middle England who's a bit I don't know who they're trying to target. You've seen a lot of their, the Let's Vaccinate Britain motto and the big British flag everywhere. And in every statement that Starmer does on television, he's got 2 British flags in the background. And it's all a bit I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know if it's sort of it's subtle hints that he's trying to win those people that, more nationalist tendencies. I don't know, but again, it's this real, they're undermining voters. They're saying that anyone that voted for the Tories or anyone that voted away from Labour for the first time in 2019, all just are nationalists. They just love, Britain. They love the flag. They love all this. And it's just a bit simple. It's a really simple way of doing things. And they could be doing so much more. They could be actually addressing issues that affect us. That would be a lot better spent, their time better spent than doing some sort of set with a great, a British flag on it. It just makes no sense.
Rather than having a frigging marketing strategy. And it's like what you were saying there, both of you, the outrage seems to be coming from the general public who are being sort of persecuted through no fault of their own because of this pandemic. And then that's causing them kicking up their ass. Whereas their job should be, oh, this isn't on, and then attacking him, but not coming the other way around when you got a fucking centre forward from Man United who's doing more on social media than the person who stood facing Boris Johnson. But Man, let's take it over to stateside as we've got 10 minutes left. But Alex, before we move on to that, where can people read more about or get involved with your party?
Yeah, so we've got like a bunch of like social media channels. You can check us out on like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've got a website, just like breakthroughparty.org.uk. People can sort of find out what we stand for there. Like it's currently, like the website's currently being developed, and like there'll be more and more stuff coming on in coming days. But like, yeah, just like, you know, if you're sick and tired of seeing the same old status quo politics, seeing what's happening in this country and going, this isn't for me, I want something better, then get involved, because without us doing this, it will stay the same forever. And I don't want that. I don't want it for myself. I don't want it for my parents. I don't want it for my children's future. I don't want it for my grandchildren's future. I want something better, and it can be better. We just all need to fight it. And, you know, as the 99% fight the 1%, rather than the 99% just all fighting each other. Like we can, if we bring everyone together against, you know, in this unified cause against you know, these elite politicians and billionaires that are destroying this country, that's where our energy should be better spent. And we can do that together. And like, I'm really excited about trying to do that.
Well said. But we'll put a link to your socials in the description. So everyone watching the video, if you're listening, have a look in the description of this video or this audio track, and it'll be there. There'll be a link to Alex's socials there and Breakthrough Party, so you can check all that out.
Right. Last week it was Jay's birthday, and for a birthday present, Donald Trump got impeached for a second time. Many happy returns, Jay. Best birthday present you've had?
It's weird. When I blew out my candles and I made that wish, little did I know that the birthday gods were listening. And yeah, he did get impeached for basically trying to stage a military coup almost, really, wasn't it? It was like, I think the exact, is it inciting violence or whatever against, or insurrection, whatever it was. But me and you, Scotty, last time we were talking, I think just a week before, we were saying, weren't we, that we were worried how this was going to pan out the last few weeks of the Donald Trump presidency. And I think none of us predicted that he would actually stage a military coup. Or not even a military coup, just an insurrection using his followers. But that's pretty much what happened. And we've seen the one thing that's really, I'm laughing about this, but one thing that's scary about this whole episode is I was chatting to my pal Adam McCall today at work, and we were looking at, so there's lots of arrests going on from all the people that were rioting and tried to storm the Capitol, or did storm the Capitol buildings. And a lot of these people who've been getting arrested over the last few days, they're not jobless convicts who are just kicking around on probation or have been in and out of prison. The police officers, the fire officers, the military, the serving military in some cases, they're ex-military. Do you know what I mean? These are people. There was one, forgive me, I can't remember if it's a man or woman, who was literally a probation officer. There was another one who's a judge, the son of a judge. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are people who are in positions where they're in authority, they can obviously have an influence over other people's lives, and they're extreme right-wing, white supremacist type thugs. And it just really scares me that what some people in America must be going through, where you could be up in front of this judge or be arrested by this copper or this police officer who's literally a white supremacist and who's trying to overthrow the government. And that's someone who's in authority. And it's just really, really scary. It really is, not just what Trump is, but by the amount of people he's got going along with this charade and the positions that those people have got within that country.
Does that even surprise you, though, Jay? Really, after seeing everything that happened with the George Floyd thing and the police brutality history that's happened in America over the years, does it really surprise you that them people in power hold them views?
Not that they hold them views, but that racism is everywhere. It's inherent in. I'm not naive enough to think that you don't get racist judges or racist police officers or racist probation officers. What surprises me and scares me that you've got it to a level where these people who are in these positions are willing to go and storm the Capitol and be on camera doing it and face the wrath of what they can do, because they're that flagrant about it now that they're just not even pretending to hide it anymore. Yeah. It's like, you know what, I am this, and I don't even give a toss who knows it. Because let's face facts, some of them were fucking live tweeting themselves whilst they were doing this. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, you can have this, and I know you're always going to have that element of subversiveness and racism or whatever, but the fact that these people feel so emboldened at the minute that they're just going for it all in, that's really scary to me, that, because for a lot of them as well, there's no way back from this. Do you know what I mean?
Some of them came out with the excuse, and I'll bring Alex in on this. We're sort of saying that the president should be giving pardons out because they were only following his directions from social media. Now, if he's been impeached for doing that, haven't they got some sort of cause for argument?
It sounds like it's not to like make such a bold comparison, but doesn't that sound like Nazi Germany when it's like, oh, we were just carrying out orders and that's kind of it? You know what I mean? Like,
not, you know what, right? Whatever it's called, Hodgkin's law, whatever they call it, where everything gets compared to Nazi Germany. In this case, rightly so, because it fucking is. Let's not kid ourselves. Do you know what I mean? You've seen it, and it is. You know, the sort of the analogy works and the connection works, and you can see the similarities there between what has gone on now and what was going on in 1930s Germany or 1920s Germany even. So, well, there's the 20s and 30s, wasn't it? So, yeah, I get it. And going back to your original point, Scott, like, can these people have an argument that if he's sort of told them to go and do it or he's encouraged it, that they should be getting pardoned for him? I don't know. From him, sorry. I don't know if... I mean, he's doing a lot of pardoning. There's at the time of recording, there's suggestions he's going to pardon up to, I think, 100 people in the next 2 days. Yeah. Some of them really distasteful. I mean, he already pardoned the soldiers that committed those murders, didn't he, in Iraq? Yeah. Which was the Blackwater ones. I forget the name, which was pretty disgraceful. I mean, I'm scared to say this with Donald Trump, but I don't even know if he can get away with that one. Because there was fears, could he pardon everyone that was involved? I don't know if that worked because, I mean, you had people there with zip ties and guns trying to kidnap Nancy Pelosi, for fuck's sake. I don't even know. Like, I think from what I've been reading is Lindsey Graham told him, who still has his ear, you can't pardon these people because if you pardon them, it'll be the end of your presidency, even as a historical memory of an achievement. People will look at it and go, that was just a fucking nightmare. Like, whether that carries weight.
That horse has already bolted, I think, James.
I know, I mean, to us it has, but do you know what I mean? In terms of like the Republican Party or the support, if he does that, it'll be like, I don't know if that's going to work in terms of convincing him, but that was what the argument that Lindsey Graham's thinking. And I think, you know, you can never know with Trump, but I think it's, as it stands at the minute, I think he's just going to let them lot just get arrested and he don't really care.
Is Trump 2024 on the cards, do you think? Do you think he'll run? Maybe not even as a Republican candidate. Do you think he'll try and run in 2024 if he doesn't get and put in prison, which could? Well,
this is it. This is the thing they're saying out with the part of the impeachment is they could stop him from, or they can add it. It's not a given, but can they try and stop him from running in 2024? I don't know if that's going to happen. As you said, I think New York and other places are looking to prosecute him for tax evasion. I would never count Donald Trump out. I wish I could, but I certainly won't count him out.
It'd probably work. It'd work better for the Democrats, that though, wouldn't it? Because you'd sort of figure if Donald Trump ran for his own party, then that'd split the Republican vote, wouldn't it? So that could actually be a positive thing if he did do that, Alex.
Yeah, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? I reckon it'd be a Trump-Kanye 2024.
Okay, no.
You know what?
Heard it here first.
Someone clip this up in fucking 3 years' time when they both join up to run. And, you know, they win the popular vote. You never know. I mean, up until he dropped out in 92, and then he came back in. But by the time he came back in, it was too late. Ross Perot was leading. You know, he had more of the vote. I think there was Theodore Roosevelt ran as an independent in 1912 or whatever. But you're right. In that case, Scott, he split the Republican Party. So possibly that could happen. But what worries me is that the Republican Party gets so fearful of him again. They go, do you know what? We'd rather have you as a president, a Republican president, than not be in the White House. Mm. So, because let's face facts. He was never a Republican, really, was he, Trump? When going into that 2016 election, he used to be a Democrat, and then he was a Libertarian, and then he just found a place in the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's similar with Boris Johnson, though, isn't it? Like with the Leave and Remain thing. Like he never really said he was a Leave campaigner until it benefited him, and then he kind of went, "Oh, actually, yeah, I do want to leave." You know, his family have got massive ties to the EU and Europe, and you know, he was very much like, I don't think I can't remember rightly, but I think he was like a supporter of the EU and like wasn't very much for leaving it until the political opportunity came up that clearly the Leave side were going to win, and he went, "Oh, I want to be on the winning side and have an opportunity to get further up the ladder." Like as I said, like Trump again, like they're opportunists. Like they'll do whatever it takes to get in power, even if it's going against all their core principles and all their core values or any morality whatsoever. But like, I do think it'll be interesting to see what Republicans do next. Like who's going to be their next leader? I mean, see that because I think Liz Cheney, which would be very interesting considering we've seen how her dad is and what he's done. But like, it would not surprise me at all that if someone like her came in and tried to do something, because I don't think she's ever been a massively big public supporter of Trump, but she's quite high up in the Republican Party now. And like all the people around Trump, their careers you'd think are going to be over. Like I can't see how any of them could now run to be the next Republican leader in 2024 because they're tarnished, aren't they? It'll be the same with Boris Johnson once the Tories eventually out. Like you can never see like Dominic Raab or Priti Patel becoming the next leader of this country. Well, you'd hope not, anyway.
I just wonder whether, I mean, again, logic says no, but this logic's gone out the window with Trumpism and everything else. Whether Ivanka ever ends up running. I mean, you know, Ivanka Kanye could be a fucking ticket one day. And again, that pains me to even say that out loud, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
she's managed to stay away from him. She's managed to stay away from a lot of the controversy. Like Donald Trump Jr. and Eric have very much been like those angry. They've basically been like Trump supporters, really. Like they have been the epitome of what they are, like really angry and just got no real logic or sense or anything really. But like they're never gonna have a chance of like running themselves. But Ivanka has sort of kept her nose clean, I'd argue. Like she definitely, I think she could be in a much better position, as you say, than probably Donald Trump and probably both his sons as well have been so vocal against like, you know, like the vote stuff. I don't think Ivanka said anything about the vote like against, you know, at all. And like, you know, I think that's a really interesting point. I think I would not surprise me, Jay, at all, like what you're saying. I generally do think she could go for 2024. So maybe I'll change my prediction. Ivanka and Kanye 2024.
Whatever it's going to be, we reckon Kanye is going to be there in thereabouts in 2024, flogging Yeezys on Capitol Hill. Alex, it looks like Donald Trump, all going well, will have left the White House by the time we do a next podcast. So as our political correspondent for the evening, how would you sum up Donald Trump's presidency?
That is tough. Definitely a car crash. Like that's a big thing. You know, when people like they're on the motorway and they're slowing down because they kind of want to see what happened, but they need to look away as well. Like they can't look away. It's felt like that with Trump. Like I think the media have been like that. I think general public have been like that. I think everyone has, because it's just so. It's been shocking. Like you even cast your mind back to when he was going for when he was going to try and be the candidate, and he like imitated that, you know, that disabled reporter, and like, you know, like the grab him by the pussy stuff, and you know, even at the start of his presidency, like banning like people from like, you know, majority Muslim countries and stuff. Like this stuff you would just never ever envisage a president doing. And he's ultimately like he has turned the tide of politics forever. Like I think generally it will take a long time to come back from this. I think you've seen it across Europe, you know, you've seen it here, this populism that's, you know, and I think it will take a long time to defeat it. But he has changed politics in America forever. Like I think there's absolutely no doubt. And there's going to be, you know, 70 million, 75 million angry Americans out there, and God knows what they'll do next and who they'll support next. Like I think it opens the doors for a lot more extremism. If I'm honest with you, he's kind of gone out exactly how I thought he would, kicking and screaming. Like this was always what was going to happen. I never thought he'd actually do a military coup. Like I know America have been very good at doing that in other countries, but maybe not in the US. So the fact they've actually managed to do it to themselves is pretty spectacular. So like, yeah, like seeing what's happened to Trump since the election defeat hasn't surprised me. And he's gone out exactly how he came in, controversial and just not a very nice human being. Get him out, get him in prison, and let's just be done with that. There's no more, like no Trump should be allowed to go in for elections in the future. Let's just not allow that. Don't want Ivanka and Kanye to be 2024.
Completely agree. Donald Trump was the only president that could keep lowering the bar and managing to limbo under it. Let's just hope that Joe Biden can step over it when he becomes president next week. But I've been Scotty, that's been Motta, and that's been Alex Mays. Make sure you're checking out the Breakthrough Party. The links will be in the bottom. Thanks everyone that's been subscribing. Hope you're all staying sane out there in this lockdown part 3. Hopefully the last. I hope so. But stay safe, and we'll be back next week.